The royal family is no stranger to hidden tensions, but few stories spark as much intrigue as the rumored clash over one of the crown's most treasured possessions. When Queen Elizabeth II made a quiet but firm decision to deny Camilla access to a set of priceless royal jewels, whispers began to swirl through palace corridors. But what made this choice even more shocking was the claim that the jewels were destined for Catherine all along. What exactly really happened behind the palace's glittering silence? And do you think the jewels were really Catherine's? What could be so special about them that makes Camilla want? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal drama, please subscribe. The Silent Language of the Royal Jewels. Before we go any further, we need to set the scene properly, because understanding what happened inside Buckingham Palace in May 2025 requires understanding what was at stake and why the discovery of a single brooch was enough to detonate everything that followed. Queen Elizabeth II left behind a legacy that stretched across 7 decades of unbroken service. She was not simply a monarch, she was an institution within an institution, a woman who wore the crown through the death of a beloved husband, the public rebellion of her own children, the near collapse of public trust in the monarchy, and the relentless pressure of a world that never stopped watching, never stopped judging, and never stopped demanding more than any single human being could reasonably give. When she passed, she left behind not only a throne, but a collection. Jewelry worn at the defining ceremonies of a nation's history, personal correspondence composed during its most significant moments, private effects that carried the fingerprints of 7 decades of duty, items that belonged not simply to a family, but to the history of an entire people. Under the strict statutes of the Royal Collection Trust, those items, particularly the most personal ones, were sealed inside a reinforced vault inside Buckingham Palace, protected by laws specifically designed to keep them untouched for nearly 100 years, not to be moved, not to be examined, not to be seen by any living member of the royal family until well into the next century. That protection was not bureaucratic red tape. It was a promise that the late Queen's private voice would reach exactly the people she intended, at exactly the moment she intended, and not a single day before. That is the foundation of this story. Hold it firmly in your mind, because everything that happened next was a direct and deliberate violation of it. It was a Tuesday morning in early May 2025 when Royal Treasurer Donald Walton arrived at Buckingham Palace carrying a leather folder under his arm. He was there for a routine quarterly audit, the kind of careful administrative work that generates no headlines, attracts no cameras, and produces no drama. Just a trusted official with a responsibility to confirm that everything inside the royal treasury was exactly where it should be. It wasn't. Inside the secured vault, Walton discovered that several personal possessions belonging to the late Queen Elizabeth II were missing, not temporarily relocated, not checked out for restoration or exhibition, gone. And the items that had disappeared were not minor or peripheral pieces. The first missing item was the sapphire Jubilee brooch, a piece of extraordinary historical significance worn by Queen Elizabeth II during her 65th Jubilee celebration. The same sapphire, the same intricate setting, a piece of jewelry photographed at one of the monarchy's most important milestone moments. This was not a decorative accessory sitting in a drawer somewhere. This was a symbol of the crown itself. The second missing item stopped everyone cold. It was the double-strand pearl necklace the late Queen had worn on one of the most solemn, grief-filled days in modern royal memory, the funeral of Princess Diana in 1997. Think about the weight of that for a moment. A necklace worn during a national mourning, a piece that carried not just extraordinary monetary value, but an emotional significance that simply cannot be measured or priced in any catalog. But those 2 items, as significant as they were not the most alarming discoveries in that leather folder, because also missing from that vault were 2 worn, leather-bound journals. And the moment that detail became known, this story transformed into something else entirely. The woman behind the vault. Queen Elizabeth II was admired across the world for her calm discipline, quiet strength, and unshakable devotion to duty. She spent decades on the throne without publicly defending most of her personal choices, especially when those choices involved royal traditions, ceremonies, or family matters. Instead, she allowed silence to speak for her. But over the years, that silence created mystery. It encouraged people to observe carefully, connect details, and search for meaning beneath the polished surface of royal life. Few things have sparked more curiosity than the legendary royal jewelry collection. To outsiders, the royal vault may look like a glowing treasure room filled with crowns, tiaras, diamonds, and rare gemstones. Yet inside the monarchy, these pieces are far more than signs of wealth or beauty. They are powerful symbols of identity, duty, and history. Every jewel tells a story. Some were worn at coronations that shaped the destiny of Britain. Others appeared at royal weddings, state visits, and alliances between nations. Many also mark private moments shared within the royal family, quietly passing from one generation to the next. In many ways, the collection serves as a silent archive of the monarchy's long journey. It holds memories, traditions, and turning points, preserving the past while linking it to the present and future of the royal line. It remains a living link between history, power, and legacy. It endures. Queen Elizabeth seemed to understand this better than anyone. She rarely treated royal jewelry as simple decoration. To her, these pieces symbolized continuity, stability, and the public image of the crown. The person chosen to wear a particular jewel often sent a message without a single word being spoken. A tiara was never just a tiara. A necklace was never simply beautiful. Every appearance, every occasion, and every selection carried possible meaning. Because of this, royal experts and longtime observers began noticing patterns in how certain jewels were shared among members of the family. Some royals repeatedly appeared wearing iconic and historically important pieces linked closely to the future of the monarchy. Others were more often seen in safer, less symbolic selections. Over time, these choices fueled endless discussion among royal watchers who believed the Queen's decisions reflected hierarchy, trust, responsibility, and even long-term vision. Of course, Queen Elizabeth never openly confirmed such theories. She remained consistent in her lifelong habit of restraint. Yet the patterns became difficult for many people to ignore. As public interest in the royal family grew, especially in the modern media age, the symbolism behind royal jewelry became more fascinating than ever. Every public appearance was analyzed. Every tiara choice sparked debate. Every loan from the royal vault was viewed as a clue to deeper dynamics within the palace walls. And it is through this lens of symbolism, tradition, and quiet royal messaging that the story surrounding Camilla and Catherine truly begins to unfold. Why does Diana's memory still captivates many? How did Catherine unknowingly evoke Diana's memory before the people? Let's delve into the details of the first echo: Pearl's memory and Diana's shadow. Among modern royal figures, few have touched hearts around the world as deeply as Princess Diana. She was more than a public figure. She was someone people truly felt connected to. Her life story, filled with both joy and struggle, made her easy to relate to. Her gentle nature, warm kindness, and care for those in need made her stand out wherever she went. She also became famous for her simple yet elegant fashion style, which inspired many people across the world. Even many years after her passing, her memory is still very strong. People continue to speak of her with love, sadness, and deep respect, keeping her spirit alive in stories and memories shared everywhere across generations around the world. Because of this strong emotional connection, anything linked to her carries meaning that goes far beyond its physical worth. A dress, a photograph, or a piece of jewelry once connected to Diana is never seen as just an object. Instead, it becomes a reminder of her presence, her era, and the feelings she inspired in millions of people around the world. One of the most widely discussed symbolic moments in recent royal memory centers on a 4-strand pearl choker that is strongly associated with Diana's past wardrobe. This necklace had appeared in several moments of her public life, making it instantly recognizable to royal watchers and longtime admirers of the late princess. At a major royal gathering held at St. George's Chapel during the funeral events for Prince Philip in April 2021, Catherine, Princess of Wales, arrived wearing a pearl choker that many immediately connected to Diana's history. The occasion itself was quiet, heavy, and deeply respectful. The world was watching closely as members of the royal family gathered in formal mourning, each step and gesture reflecting the seriousness of the moment. In the middle of this atmosphere of grief and tradition, Catherine's choice of jewelry stood out in a subtle but powerful way. The pearls, soft and glowing under the chapel lights, seemed to bring back a visual memory of Diana. Without a single word spoken, the past appeared to echo into the present through something as simple as a necklace. For many observers, it felt like a quiet reminder of continuity within the royal family, where memory and legacy often overlap. Seated among senior royals, Camilla maintained the calm and composed presence expected at such a solemn state occasion. Yet public discussions later often focused less on individual interactions and more on the emotional layers people believed were present in the scene. What made the moment so striking was not any visible tension or direct exchange, but the powerful sense of association it created. It was as if history briefly stepped forward into the present, carried not by words or actions, but by symbolism alone. And the public, always attentive to meaning within royal life, noticed it clearly and remembered it. Let's dig into the details of the early fault lines and the royal entry of Camilla. Camilla's concerns over tiara plans. Not everyone is thrilled about Charlotte getting the tiara. Reports say Camilla isn't fully on board with the plan. Insiders report that she thinks the Spencer tiara should stay with Diana's family or be shared among other younger family members. It is no secret that Camilla has always been careful about anything tied to Diana. However, she has a strong opinion about this particular jewelry and feels left out of the decision-making process. Most people seem to think that Camilla would avoid anything connected to Diana. And this is because the whole Diana-Charles-Camilla situation was messy. However, people were surprised when Camilla wore some of Diana's old jewelry in public. Add that to what's happening now with Charlotte inheriting and wearing Diana's tiara, one can see why things are tense. It's kind of a double standard that Camilla can wear Diana's jewelry, but when Diana's granddaughter wants to wear it, there's a problem. But many find Camilla's objection surprising, given her extensive collection of jewels, including the recent iconic piece that belongs to the late princess that she was photographed wearing. The double standard. Back in January 2022, Camilla started a controversy by wearing Diana's old necklace as a brooch. Pretty bold move, considering their history. What got people talking was that this wasn't just any random piece of jewelry. Some of Camilla's collection includes jewelry Charles gave her during their affair, plus pieces Diana used to wear. But choosing to wear and change up Diana's necklace? That hit a nerve with royal watchers. Let's get real about why this brooch is such a big deal. Charles and Camilla's relationship started as an affair while he was married to Diana. That's no secret. Even though Charles and Camilla have been together for years now, and Diana's gone, plenty of Diana's fans still give Camilla a hard time. The brooch everyone's talking about used to be a necklace that Diana got from the Queen Mother. We're talking about a fancy piece with a green emerald and diamonds that Diana wore as a choker. Maxwell Stone from Stephen Stone Jewelers broke down the whole story for Express UK, and the thing is, it's not just about the jewelry. It's about what it represents. Here's Camilla. Wearing something that belongs to the woman whose marriage she played a part in ending. No wonder people are upset. Even after all this time, anything connecting Camilla and Diana stirs up old feelings. What is the true story behind the drama that has refused to be buried? The discovery that changed everything. In the private wing assigned to Queen Camilla's family, a palace maid named Eleanor Hartridge made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the monarchy. She had served in those rooms for over a decade. She knew every drawer, every carpet fold, every quiet corner where nothing unusual should ever exist. It happened almost by accident. While tidying young Eliza's bedroom, Eleanor noticed something strange beneath a small wardrobe. A rabbit-shaped jewelry box had been placed toward the back, slightly out of alignment. When she lifted it, the base felt heavier than it should have. A subtle shift in the light revealed a hidden seam. Her hands trembled as she pressed against the lining. A false bottom lifted. Inside, wrapped carefully and deliberately concealed, lay the sapphire jubilee brooch. There was no mistaking it. The deep blue stone caught the light with unmistakable brilliance. This was the same brooch Queen Elizabeth II had worn during her historic 65th Jubilee celebration, a symbol of endurance, service, and continuity. It was not merely jewelry. It was a legacy. Eleanor did not speak. She did not panic. She wrapped the brooch carefully in silk and reported directly to the investigators. Within the hour, the royal jeweler had examined the piece under controlled lighting. The confirmation was immediate and devastating. It was authentic. It was the missing brooch. The implications were staggering. This was not discovered in a distant estate or hidden in a forgotten corridor. It had been found in the bedroom of Camilla's own granddaughter, inside the Queen Consort's private residential wing at Buckingham Palace. The location alone made denial nearly impossible. King Charles was informed at once. He did not summon a council. He did not consult advisors. He called for Camilla directly. 20 minutes later, she entered his private study. The air inside the room felt heavy, as if the walls themselves understood what was unfolding. On the desk between them, illuminated beneath a single lamp, lay the sapphire brooch. Camilla's eyes fell on it instantly. For a brief second, something flickered across her face. Surprise, calculation, perhaps both. Charles did not raise his voice. He did not accuse her outright. Instead, he asked one controlled, deliberate question about how such an item could possibly end up in that room. The silence that followed felt endless. This was no misplaced heirloom, no administrative oversight. The brooch had not simply wandered, it had been hidden, carefully, beneath a false bottom in a child's jewelry box. That required planning. It required access. It required intent. As Charles looked at the woman beside whom he had stood for decades, the weight of realization settled over him. This was not confusion. It was not a misunderstanding. It was calculated. And what did Charles see beside him? Devotion or a calculated truth hiding in plain sight for decades? Keep watching. The royal rebel who changed the monarchy forever. Despite the marital challenges and public scandals, Diana maintained incredibly high popularity, while Charles struggled with public approval. Her former private secretary, Patrick Jepson, described her as organized and hardworking, and suggested that Charles could not handle her extraordinary public appeal. Diana was tough as a boss. She valued people who worked hard and spoke up when she thought she wasn't being treated right. Her mom said she was loving, but could be moody sometimes. Above all, Diana was really focused on being a good parent. You can see a lot of her personality in how William and Harry turned out. Even today, the younger royals try to do things the way Diana did, which keeps people remembering her. She was not only a fashion icon, but she influenced and continues to influence how people dress around the world. In 2012, Time magazine named her one of their top fashion icons ever. When she wore something, people rushed to buy it. Take 1980, for instance, when she wore hunter rain boots at Balmoral. The company could barely keep up with all the orders that came in right after. Time magazine recognized her influence by including her in their all-time 100 fashion icons list in 2012. The people who dressed Diana and worked with her said that she picked her outfits carefully to help with her charity work and show who she really was. She knew her clothes sent a message, and she was happy to spread the message of love, equality, fairness, and justice. She wasn't just a style icon or a royal rebel, She was a trailblazer who reshaped what it meant to be part of the monarchy. Let's see how she still shakes things up today. Inspiration or source of royal drama. Kate and Meghan are a lot like Diana when it comes to making the royal family seem more real to people. Their charity work and the way they talk to the public also help regular folks feel closer to the royals. While Kate and Meghan each do things their own way, you can see they learned from how Diana did things. Even today, people still argue about who should get Diana's jewelry. While her pieces were meant to stay in the family, deciding who gets what has caused some fights. Kate now wears Diana's blue sapphire ring, but there's still debate about her other pieces like the Spencer tiara. The real issue isn't about who should get her jewelry, it's about who's wearing it now. Most people think her jewelry should only go to her sons William and Harry, or to her grandkids. However, Camilla wears quite a few pieces from Diana's collection, and she doesn't seem to mind that people are upset about it. When Camilla wears Diana's jewelry, it shows the split between people who want to keep Diana's memory alive and those who say it's time to move on. Some think it's just normal for royal jewelry to be passed around. Others see it as another sign that the family still can't handle Diana's legacy the right way. While Diana's legacy is being respected by some and walked over by others, there's a bigger issue brewing. What controversy is lurking beneath the surface of the palace walls? The journals that were never supposed to be opened. These journals were not ceremonial records maintained for future historians. They were not official palace diaries logged as part of institutional documentation. They were something far more intimate, far more private, and far more dangerous. Handwritten personal reflections composed by Queen Elizabeth II during the long, isolated, psychologically demanding months of the global lockdown. Private thoughts. Personal letters addressed directly to her heirs. Reflections about the weight of duty, the experience of loss, and the fragile and increasingly difficult task of maintaining the relevance of the crown in a world that was fracturing in real time around her. Words written by a woman in the final chapter of her reign, sitting alone with her thoughts during one of the strangest and most isolating periods any living person had ever experienced. Under the strict statutes of the Royal Collection Trust, those journals were sealed for nearly a century. Their official opening would not occur until well into the 22nd century. Queen Elizabeth herself had intended those pages to be read by a generation not yet born, a generation that would have the benefit of distance, context, and perspective that no one living today possesses. That was her wish. That was also the law. Someone had violated both. Donald Walton closed his leather folder and escalated the matter immediately through proper palace channels. Within hours, the situation had risen far above the level of a routine treasury discrepancy. By the time King Charles was fully briefed, the word missing had already been quietly replaced with a far more serious and far more consequential word: stolen. Crowns, conflicts, and controversy. There is an interesting story about why Kate couldn't wear Diana's wedding tiara in 2011. We have established that the Spencer tiara wasn't a royal piece. It belonged to Diana's family. Today, that tiara is worth about $400 million, and the interesting part is that it is still owned by the Spencers. They made it clear that Kate couldn't use it, even though she was marrying Diana's son. Even Charlotte, Diana's own granddaughter, won't get this very important Spencer tiara. It's staying in Diana's birth family, probably going to one of her nieces or cousins instead. This chaos surrounding the jewelry is not about how expensive it is, rather it is about the meaning they carry. It is therefore not surprising that since Camilla is usually caught up in the midst of all the drama and controversy, she is not the favorite member of the royal family. In fact, the numbers show Camilla's got a real popularity problem. A Daily Mail poll found only 14% of people like calling her Queen Camilla. More than a third want to stick with Queen Consort Camilla. And get this, About a quarter of people don't think she should have any royal title. Even her old title, Duchess of Cornwall, polls better at 16%. Pretty clear sign people aren't loving her new role. The facts are pretty clear. Camilla's still struggling to win people over. When only 14% of people support your title, you've got a problem. Let's look at other reasons why people are still having such a hard time accepting Camilla as queen. The call that came from within. The discovery of the Sapphire Jubilee brooch on Sunday, May 14, 2025, did not happen in isolation. It was the final piece of a chain of events that had begun 10 days earlier, on the quiet morning of Wednesday, May 4, 2025. That was the day Donald Walton, the royal treasurer who had overseen the vaults since September 2022, walked into Buckingham Palace carrying a leather folder that would alter everything. His quarterly audit had uncovered something unthinkable. Several of Queen Elizabeth II's most sacred private possessions were missing from the secured treasury. Among them was the Sapphire Jubilee brooch. Also gone was the double-strand pearl necklace the late Queen had worn during Princess Diana's funeral in 1997, a piece heavy with history and grief. But even more alarming were two handwritten journals bound in worn leather. These were not ceremonial records. They were deeply personal reflections written during the darkest months of the global lockdown, containing private letters addressed to her heirs. Under the statutes of the Royal Collection Trust, such items were to remain sealed for 99 to 100 years. They were never meant to be touched. King Charles ordered a private investigation immediately. Sir Clement Mallister, a veteran of royal intelligence, was given full authority to operate in silence. No public inquiry. No press involvement. Absolute discretion. The first breakthrough came during the review of security logs from April 27th. A guard named Robert Halton had clocked into the Treasury area at 3:49 a.m., nearly 2 hours before his scheduled shift. There was no clear explanation for his early presence, and more troubling still, there was no closing report documenting his activity. Halton was brought in for questioning. At first, he insisted nothing unusual had occurred, but under sustained pressure, his composure fractured. He admitted he had entered the restricted vault area after receiving instructions through an internal palace line. The caller had known his name, his shift schedule, even personal details about his family. They had implied authority from upstairs and offered financial assistance that would cover his wife's cancer treatment. Halton claimed he believed he was following legitimate orders from within the royal household. He insisted he never physically stole anything himself. He had only allowed access. Sir Clement traced the internal call. The origin was not external. It did not come from a foreign entity or a burner device. It was traced directly to the private residential wing of Buckingham Palace. The wing occupied by Queen Camilla. There were no broken locks, no triggered alarms. The vault's reinforced steel doors had only opened because someone with clearance made it possible. The breach had been clean, precise, almost surgical. When Clement presented these findings to King Charles, the room fell into a silence more devastating than any accusation. This was not a random security failure. It was not a careless mistake. The theft of the brooch, the pearls, and the Queen's most guarded journals had not been orchestrated from outside the gates. It had originated from within the palace walls. And now, with the sapphire brooch already found hidden in that same wing, the pattern was no longer theoretical. It was personal. So now, with the sapphire brooch uncovered, was this discovery coincidence or the prelude to unimaginable judgment? Stay glued. From Duchess to Queen. Born in 1947 as Camilla Shand, she grew up in East Sussex and South Kensington, going to schools in England, Switzerland, and France. She first married Andrew Parker Bowles in 1973. But everyone knew the real story. She and Charles had something going on before and during both their marriages. The media couldn't get enough of it, and people all over the world watched the drama unfold. After divorcing Parker Bowles in 1995, she finally married Charles in 2005. The wedding was at Windsor Guildhall, with a church service at St. George's Chapel after. She became Duchess of Cornwall. Then everything changed on September 8, 2022.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
When Queen Elizabeth died, Charles became king, and Camilla became queen consort. They had their big coronation at Westminster Abbey on May 6, 2023. Since 1994, Camilla's been doing real work. She's made osteoporosis awareness her big cause and gotten awards for it. She's also tackled serious issues like assault and abuse, helping people learn to read, animal rights, and poverty. As queen, she goes to public events representing the monarchy. She's a patron of lots of charities. Pretty different from those early days when people only knew her as Charles's girlfriend, right? It is not surprising that she was born into a wealthy family. She grew up a bookworm thanks to her dad reading to her all the time. She had dogs and cats and spent her days riding horses, winning ribbons at local competitions. She often says her childhood was average. But let's be real, this wasn't your average upbringing. As her biographer Giles Brandreth points out, people would most times comment that she had an Enid Blyton childhood, but it was way fancier than that. The Shans weren't just well off, they were proper upper class. They had staff for everything: the house, the garden, the kids. These were the kind of people who hosted Conservative Party garden parties. Camilla's story isn't your typical one. She grew up rich and then became famous as the other woman. How did someone most people didn't like end up becoming a queen? The investigation and the trail that led back inside. Here is where this story begins its most dramatic turn, because what made this theft unlike any ordinary breach was the method by which it had been carried out. No locks had been broken, no alarms had been triggered, no glass had been shattered. The reinforced vault doors had opened normally, exactly as they were designed to open when someone with proper authorization approached them, which meant only one thing: someone with legitimate palace access had been involved. King Charles moved with decisive speed. He ordered a quiet internal investigation and placed Sir Clement Meister, a senior intelligence figure with a long record of trusted service to the royal household, in charge of uncovering the full truth. The instruction was clear and direct. Find out what happened, find out exactly how it happened, and find out who was responsible. The first major breakthrough came from the security logs. Records from the night of April 27th showed that a palace guard named Robert Halton had entered the treasury area at 3:49 in the morning, nearly 2 full hours before his scheduled shift was due to begin. Moving through a restricted wing of Buckingham Palace in the dead of night, with vault access that had no legitimate explanation at that hour. When investigators questioned him, Halton initially denied everything. He claimed nothing unusual had occurred, but under continued, careful, methodical questioning, the full picture began to emerge piece by piece. Halton admitted he had accessed the vault after receiving instructions through an internal palace phone line. The caller had known deeply personal details about him, sensitive information about his family circumstances. The caller had referenced financial pressures tied to his wife's ongoing medical treatment, implied authority within the royal household, and offered financial assistance in exchange for cooperation. Halton maintained throughout that he had believed he was following legitimate orders and had never personally removed any items from the vault. Whether that account holds together is a question worth examining. But the detail that changed everything, what Sir Clement's team discovered when they traced the origin of that internal phone call, made the entire situation far more serious. The call had not come from outside the palace. It had not been placed from an anonymous line or an external device. The signal traced directly back to the private residential wing of Buckingham Palace, the wing used by Queen Camilla. The judgment no one thought possible. By late afternoon, the evidence could no longer be contained in whispers. At exactly 4 p.m., the heavy oak doors of the palace war room were closed from the inside. Present were King Charles, Prince William, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Queen Camilla. No aides, no secretaries, no leaks. The air felt tight, charged with something irreversible. Only hours earlier, Sir Clement Mallister had confirmed that the internal call which persuaded Robert Halton to access the vault on April 27th originated from the private residential wing of Buckingham Palace, Camilla's wing. Now, with the sapphire jubilee brooch already recovered from young Eliza's room on May 14th, the investigation had moved from suspicion to confrontation. King Charles began without theatrics. His voice was calm, almost too calm. He outlined the missing items once more: the sapphire brooch worn by Queen Elizabeth II during her 65th jubilee, the double-strand pearl necklace she wore to Princess Diana's funeral in 1997, and the 2 handwritten lockdown journals protected under the Royal Collection Trust's 99 to 100-year seal. Then he revealed the trace of the internal call and the location where the brooch had been discovered. Camilla did not appear shaken. She listened, hands folded neatly, posture straight. When she finally spoke, her tone was steady. She rejected the word theft. She insisted the brooch had been verbally promised to her years earlier. According to her, Queen Elizabeth had expressed in private conversation that the sapphire would one day be hers. It was not greed, she suggested, but a matter of understanding what had already been offered. The room remained still. Then came the journals. Camilla acknowledged their removal, but framed it differently. She claimed she feared the content could damage the stability of the reign. The late Queen's reflections during the global lockdown, she implied, contained doubts and concerns about the future. By retrieving them, she believed she was safeguarding the crown, protecting Charles from potential unrest decades later. Prince William's jaw tightened. Princess Anne's expression hardened. This was not a misunderstanding over inheritance. This was deliberate action taken outside protocol. Charles stood slowly. The weight of years seemed visible in his face. He reminded the room of the law governing the late monarch's possessions. Nothing was to be touched for nearly a century. Not jewelry, not papers, not private thoughts. Personal assurances, he said quietly, are never executed through midnight calls and manipulated guards. The silence that followed felt like a final threshold. Without raising his voice, King Charles delivered the ruling. Effective immediately, Queen Camilla would be stripped of her ceremonial duties and military titles. Her public engagements would be suspended indefinitely. She would have no future claim over royal property, nor would her family. The monarchy, he declared, is sustained by service and trust. If that trust is broken within its own walls, the crown itself is weakened. No one interrupted him. The decision was both sovereign and personal. He had chosen the integrity of the institution over the protection of his marriage. In that room, history shifted. A reigning queen consort was being removed from public life not by scandal in the press, but by judgment within the palace. Outside, London moved on, unaware that one of the most dramatic decisions in modern royal history had just been made. But inside Buckingham Palace, the balance between loyalty and law had been permanently redrawn, and the consequences were only beginning to unfold. Now, what changed inside Buckingham Palace? And which forbidden pages rewrote loyalty into law forever?